Have you given any thought to contributing to the Melt? It's easy to do. Just click the Patreon link in the episode notes, and for as little as $3 a month, you can get access to bonus episodes, early access to regular episodes, and you can also participate in monthly Zoom meetups. It helps to keep the magic happening here at the Melt. So I encourage you to karmically entangle yourself with the Melt today by subscribing monthly for less than the price of a container of goatee wax, or a prosthetic pinky, or a half stick of DMT butter, or an inflatable casket, or the shrunken head of an Atlantean supermodel, or a woolly mammoth's merkin, or a crystalline replica of Baba Yaga's hut, or a capsule of Sasquatch dander.
This is Hunter Muse.
And this is Chris Snipes, and you are listening
to The Melt.
What does true freedom mean? It's a question that can't be pondered enough, but it takes a pretty extraordinary cognitive leap to fully grasp it. We have lived in this counterfeit version of reality for so long that we don't even realize the nature of it, or rather the lack of nature in it. Most of what we interact with on a day-to-day basis is completely manufactured. It's been processed and churned through the filters of those who would have us thinking that we need what they have to offer in order to be happy and safe, feel loved, be accepted by our peers, impress potential mates, feel complete, in touch, well-fed, eligible for that high-paying job, at peace with ourselves, worthy of love, free, taken care of, pampered, and to have a sense of purpose. In reality, none of this is true. Feeling grounded and conscious comes from inside. No one can sell us the land that we occupy and foods that this realm provides for free. The consumer materialist nightmare that we occupy was set up to make you feel a lack. It implies that you are just a commodity in a world of commodities, and that everything and everyone has their price. The legal matrix that underlies this consumer nightmare wants to reduce you to chattel and enslave you to a system that you have nothing to compare to in order to see how it exists, only to churn you through, steeped in ignorance in regards to your true worth and importance. It's advantageous to them to have you think that you're an accident and that you only get one go at this rat race, and that it's only human nature to be greedy, cruel, and egocentric. All of this is a belittling lie to keep you in the place that they think you belong. Wake up from your somnambulistic trance and realize that you're an important part of the interconnected whole. Without you, those around you are more apt to sleepwalk, lack critical thought, go through the motions without question, and continue to think that they are insignificant cogs in a soulless machine that fuels itself on apathy and cynicism. By waking ourselves up, we wake up the world, for we are the world. Today's guest, Clint Richardson, has spent countless hours and many years answering the question, what does true freedom mean? I start off the conversation by asking Clint where his research has led him.
Well, I thought about it, and I've come a long way in the over the years, doing radio, doing the research, doing the movies, and just along with that contemplation and considering not just rote reading and rote learning, but actually trying to understand and really actualize, if you will, what I've been learning. And I got to be honest, I've come to, I won't say I've come to the end, um, but I have come to a point where uh, I, I guess the nicest way of saying it is how some other people have said it, and isn't everything you've ever been taught is a lie.
Yes.
And that includes so many things that I don't think people even have considered. And so I thought about what would be one of the best ways to introduce people to the lies that we live as a simulation, basically. What is this? What are some of the basic foundational? What's the programming that keeps us in this delusion, this
Yes.
grand delusion, in this simulation? Keeping in mind that simulation really only has one meaning, which is hypocrisy. What have we set up in order to allow ourselves to be in a constant state of hypocrisy or simulation? Okay, it's fascinating when you think about it, because truly that's what any kind of artificial intelligence or virtual reality would be a hypocrisy against our very own nature, right? Entering into a simulation, in other words, a hypocrisy. And what was one of the big wake-up moments for me when I understood what that word alone meant? And so I was thinking about it today. I was like, how do we break down each foundation or pillar that makes up the hypocrisy, makes up our matrix, if you will, our simulation? And I thought, I might as well tackle probably the hardest one. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. So if you don't want to know the truth, I recommend you turn away, from the screen, because it's really fascinating when we start talking about this notion of truth, what it is and what it is not, what we've turned it into, a simulation, basically, a false truth that we worship as a religion. And we can call that many things. We call it truth, the truth movement. We call it the patriot movement. So many different things that we attach. Lately, I've been calling the truth movement, or whatever we're calling it today, I've been calling it the false redemption movement.
Interesting.
And that's simply because everybody's chasing some redemption other than what's, of course, laid out in the Bible. And we're going to talk about the Bible. So,
sure, absolutely.
If you don't like the notion of the Bible, I'm going to give you some information today that will change your mind.
You framing it as a law book really made me look at that. And it's not that I was triggered. I hate that word, but I'm just going to use it anyway. By the Bible, I wasn't raised by oppressive Christians or anything like that. I was never hit with the Bible. I have nothing in that area that makes me want to turn away from it. But the way that you framed it, the way that I've heard you frame it, really is thought-provoking as a book of law, and that it's all metaphorical, and Jesus is sort of an embodiment of that natural law. So yeah, it's great.
And as it says, God is truth.
Mm-hmm.
What should we worshiping? Well, not Jesus.
Yeah.
God, Jehovah. Now, what's interesting about that is that people equate the Bible to religion. Bible has nothing to do with religion, because
Exactly.
it is a book of law. The problem is it's a book of negative law, and that's where everything falls apart. All of man's law is something that we add to the truth, or to what is self-evident, self-existing, right? We add to the law of nature what are legal rules and context, right? So with words. But when we're talking about the law of God, the law of nature, the law of truth, however, whatever word suits you, the old word used to be YH, from the different translations, YHVH, Jehovah, however you want to say that is fine too. Unfortunately, the church, the Catholic Church specifically, is responsible for removing that word, Jehovah, YHVH, and replacing it with words like God and Lord God, and so many different words that were changed from the word God, from the word Jehovah, and to God. You had archon, you had king, you had magistrate, anyone in power. You had the false gods, you had the anything that was considered a god. Now you look up God in the context that it's used in the first commandment, thou shalt have no gods before me. It actually means presidents, kings, magistrates, judges, anybody that you put into power that has a law that you're considering as higher than the law of nature, law of God, right? That's why it says have no other gods. It's not talking about Zeus or these. No, it's talking about anything that you put in power that is anti-nature, anti-truth.
And it could also be other physical things. Like your God could be money. Your God could be another person. It could be a drug. It could be sugar. So the idea that you're putting these things in front of your connection with nature is an abomination.
Right, and that goes into idolatry, which is actually what that refers to. It's an adultery that people have been, through the indoctrination, we think adultery is when you cheat on your girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife. That's not what adultery is. Adulthood is actually, when you reach the age of consent and you agree to the legal system, that's adultery. That's why they call it adulthood. It's to abandon the law of nature, law of God, and to enter into a false simulation, a system of law that is positive. Now, why positive and why negative? Well, you'll notice that everything in the Bible is thou shalt not. Do not do this. Do not do that. You shall not do that. Please don't do that. Everything is don't do this. Stay pure. Stay in the truth. Do not try to, it says things like do not pretend to be something you're not. Do not respect flattering titles. Do not respect persons. Do not respect all these different things that we do on a constant basis. Okay, because we have been sort of indoctrinated into this system of law that is 100% against the law of nature, law of truth. And the best way to put that is we've entered into a matrix or a simulation. Now, it's interesting because the word matrix in the legal realm, you can go to Black's Law Second Dictionary, I believe, is where this definition is. And it says that the matrix, besides being a mother or a womb, in this case an artificial womb, the matrix is actually the first or original document that is done. I have to read the definition specifically, but it's the first or original document from which all other things are taken, or all copies are made. Can you think of what that is? When you go get a driver's license, what do you have to take with you?
Your birth certificate.
Oh, what is the matrix? What is the artificial womb? How are you born or birthed into this legal system? Through the matrix, the original document, right, which is an application to abandon your child to the state. So you can go down all these different roads and you find these parallels between the legal and the real, right? Again, womb, matrix, or an artificial womb from which a person or status is born. And when the Bible says don't respect persons, well, first thing we do is throw our child into a state of enslavement through personhood. And it's pretty amazing that that's become our culture. It's the number one agenda for the United Nations is its Agenda 2030 is to put all people into a digital person, a digital identification by the year 2030. Because you see, you can't force your law upon men. You can only force your law upon men who accept status. Status is person. A person is created through a certificate of birth. Now, you don't have to, the certificate of birth doesn't have to happen when you're born. I mean, if I'm thrown into this, if I come to this country and seek refuge and I become a citizen, I'm still being born into this country. I'm given a status, right? It's the same thing. But the birth certificate process is where that all begins, because when I come to this country and I say, hey, I want some kind of status, they're going to want my birth certificate. They want to know my origin.
Yes.
Right? Now, amazingly, again, when you understand these terms and you start applying the legal or the positive to the negative, and you see that in the negative realm or the realm of nature where everything is already there, it's self-evident and self-existent, the truth, right? As opposed to what man creates, which is always a positive or something you're adding to, right? What already exists. And that's really all you got to know is that's the definition of Jehovah. And that's why they replaced it, because Jehovah means truth. Not the truth that comes from me, not the truth that comes from me, not truth that is made of words, but that which is of nature, that which is the creation, the ongoing creation, nature, the universe, that which does not change, even though, of course, it's always changing, that which is of reality as opposed to that which is of the fiction or the legal fiction. That is really what the Bible is about. It is not about religion. It is not about, it pretty much says don't do everything you would do in a religion.
Right.
And it's pretty amazing when you discover that. For instance, if you look at Matthew where it says the Lord's Prayer, if you read just the few chapters before that, it says don't pray this prayer in public. Go into a closet and be private. Don't do as the hypocrites do.
Right.
The hypocrites will be the first one to show up at church and make you think that they're holy men, that they're spiritual men, that they follow the law of God. Meanwhile, they're the purveyors of the legal realm, right? Now, this is amazing to me because I started off hating the Bible. I started off hating religion and therefore the Bible. But when I looked at the legal law and I saw all the maxims of law that were protective of men, male or female, we're all men, everything good came from the Bible. Because it says, do not enter contract. Do not use money. Do not enter into usury. Do not do all these things that put you into the legal realm. So all the things that would be protective of us come from the Bible. All the things that are contractual, that harm us, that cause us to do things against our will or against the law of nature, law of God, law of Jehovah, in other words, that which causes us to act in simulation or untruth is all from the legal side, from the contractual side, commercial. So that is what the Bible is. It's no more or no less than, as you say, a book of law. And you can prove that to yourself. I've done plenty of research, written 3 books on the subject. It's a matter of what I decided to do was I decided to pick this thing up and I decided to go to page 1 and I decided to start reading and looking up every word. I didn't just say, oh, well, I've read the Bible 6 times. Well, that's great, but you've read it in English. English is a slave language. It's the lowest form of Latin as opposed to the law Latin or the highest form. And you're not going to get anything out of it because, one, you don't know the culture. You're not reading about any intention or purpose or reason behind why this particular word was chosen, why it was translated, etc. You have no idea what you're reading. You don't even know when you're reading the Bible if you're reading Jehovah or a man that's acting as a king in God's stead.
Exactly.
Right? You don't know because the church altered the words. The church was the government.
Right.
Okay, the separation of church and state, that's so the state can protect the church and the church can protect the state. There's no, it wasn't some holy or political move. It was purely a protective move so that you have two pillars that can always support one another, right?
I want to comment on one thing that you said. For many years, I've said that truth does not need our consensus. So truth exists outside of the realm of man, and if we're lucky, we can penetrate it, we can touch it, we can reach it. But this idea that we are the arbiters of truth, I think, is a complete misnomer.
It's the hard part is to understand, as the Bible instructs, you are the truth. You are part of God. But see, we've been entrained to consider God, this generic term God that nobody seems to know the definition of. Why would you write a book without giving God a definition? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Exactly. Why would you leave people guessing? What is God? What is this thing, Lord? What does it mean? Oh, of course not. No, that's why Jehovah was used over 6,000 times in the Bible. But it got retranslated, it got messed up. The church came along and hid the name. Just as the Jews were also unable to pronounce the name because it was, again, you can go to the concordances and read why, but in the Bible, the term Yahudi or Iudios, which is the translated word for Jew, it simply meant, and this makes sense if you think about it, that he who is opposed to the law of God, or the law of basically Christ, which is the Logos, right? The problem when it comes to Christ is we personify, we anthropomorphize things. Anthropomorphites were considered heretics. They're the people who believed in the image, but missed what's behind the image, what's behind the cross, what's behind all these things, these symbols, these simulations that we hold up, but we have no idea what they mean, right? So when you're talking about Jesus Christ, you're talking about the personification for the purpose of telling the story. You're talking about the personification of the law of God. Okay? And if you understand that, then you can read it and you can say, okay, I'm not going to worship this idol. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use Christ as the example to follow. Right? And so you're supposed to consider Christ as a man who had all the temptations and everything that any man does. Countless times he says, he prays to his Father, who's Jehovah. He says, I'm in trouble, help. He says so many times, do you see the side that Christ is not this God to be worshipped or this thing to be worshipped? Not to mention the first commandment, which is don't take any other gods. Why would you take Christ as God when you're supposed to take no other gods but Jehovah? So this is how messed up religion has made things, right? But the most important part to take from that, because then we can start talking about everything else, is that the reason they removed the term YHVH is exactly what you just said. It's self-evident and self-existent. That means not man-made. Simple, beautiful, eloquent, wonderful storytelling. That which is truth. Now, it would be a mistake to say that we are not part of truth, but it's also a mistake that say that what comes out of our mouths or our imaginations makes truth, right?
Is the absolute truth.
So I thought about it and I said, well, what is the one thing that I can really throw at you today that will make you question everything else you believe in? And it was something that happened to me a few years ago, and I wrote about it. I got so many things I want to finish and write in books, but I wrote about these sort of pillars or these foundations that support the whole mythos, the whole patriot mythology, the so-called truth of everything, history being, the lie that the victors tell. And one of those things, again, you can't trust anyone's version of history, not even your own. I mean, how many times have you lied about yourself? Interviews, right? So let's take the concept of time, right? I'm here promptly at 6:00 p.m. Mountain whatever time zone, and you're in Central Time, and we're, time is this wonderful thing that we all know is true, and right, because it worked, right? Time is wonderful. Well, wait a minute. What is time? Is time a natural occurrence, or is it a man-made concept?
Man-made concept.
Is it made of something natural, or is it made of characters, digits that man created?
I think it maybe was initially referencing the sky clock or something of that sort, but then it drifted into symbols and...
Well, there again, what is the sky clock?
Sure.
Now, here's the hard part, because in order to understand what is truth, as we discussed, you have to come a little bit outside of yourself. You have to drop your ego. You have to drop all the things you think you know and you believe, and you have to consider what is self-evident and what is self-existent. But more importantly, you have to consider perspective. Okay? Now I'm looking up, and I can see that the sun is slowly moving, and eventually, I know, because every day it happens, it might be in a little different place every day, but every day it's going to go down behind the mountain, and the darkness comes, and then it's going to come up over, and the light comes, right? That's my perspective. Okay. Here's the problem. There's an old Twilight Zone episode, and when I watched it, I just about shit my pants because it completely destroyed all concepts that I had of time. I realized there is no such thing as time. For instance, we're on the Jesus timeline, right? Our calendric year starts at the year 0. Jews are on the creation's timeline. Their year is 20, I can't remember what it is, 30 something, fourth. It's based on the concept of that the earth was created so many years ago, and so their calendar is based on creation. Other cultures have completely different calendars. So as I'm researching this, I'm like, oh, okay, so we're just on this timeline that the powers that be in the Jesus realm, right, it created for us to exist in, and so all of our contracts and everything are written in this subscript of what we call time. So here's what happens. There's an episode of Twilight Zone. It's called "How to Serve Man." One of people's favorite episodes, but for the wrong reasons. Now I'm going to spoil the episode. How to Serve Man is a big book, right? Mm-hmm. And the whole episode, they're trying to translate it. These aliens come down to Earth, and they're friendly, and they want to give us all kinds of technology, and they want to take us back to their planet, sort of as an exchange type of situation. And they present this book, but it's in their language, and they are able to decipher the title, which says "How to Serve Man," which makes them think, oh, that's wonderful, right? Here's a group of benevolent aliens who have come to Earth to serve man. And they're proving it. They're giving us technologies, and they're healing us, and they're doing wonderful things, right? And, the plot of the story is that people start going back on their spaceships, back to their planet. And just as the main scientist is about to go on their ship, his girlfriend or whatever she is, she comes in, she says, don't go. We figured out It's a cookbook.
Oh my God, that's great.
How to serve man. And he tries to run, but they force him on the ship. Now, what's important about this episode is what comes next, because they're flying through outer space now, right? Headed towards, in the middle of nothing, no obstructions, nothing but what we call space. And what does he ask? You know, they're trying to get him to eat, fatten him up so they can eat him. And he says, my God, what time is it anyway? And the answer that the alien gives him changed my entire life. He said, well, in your limited perspective, which you call time on Earth, or from the perspective of Earth where you exist, the time would be this. But in space, there is no time. Well, what do you mean? Well, think about it. If I'm here in the middle of space, what can I use? Where's the horizon to measure the sun? Where is the sky clock? There is nothing, because I'm now from a perspective where I can see the entirety of space around me. There is nothing happening that I can measure that would be a 24 or a 30 or a 50-hour cycle. There is nothing. There is no such thing as time. There is no day. There is no night, right? There is nothing but what we call space, whatever that is. The ocean of whatever, right? And so at that point, I realized that the whole system, that the entire legal system, its main pillar is the artificial construct of time. Now, this is not to take away from the usefulness of the Farmer's Almanac. This is not to take away from the tool that is what we call time when used for the purposes of, say, predicting the crop cycles and that kind of thing. What this is to say is that artificial things cannot exist without time. I cannot enter into a contract without time. Time, or the construct that we call time, is the very, very basis for the legal contract. They even call the time where a person is birthed, where the person is created by the application, to the point where we get a death certificate, a receipt showing that the person no longer is viable as a commercial entity, right? This fictional person. They call that period of time from birth to death, they call it life. The life of a contract, the life of a person. The time when the contract is signed until it is solved or dissolved, the solution of the contract. Solution means end of contract, nothing else. So if you're looking for solutions, end your contracts. That's all it is. End your personhood, end your citizenship. If you take the time that the contract starts to the time that the contract ends, that is called the life. That's about the 25th definition of life out of Webster's dictionary, the life of the contract. Artificial life. Now, when we think of contract, what is the devil's number one tool? What is he always trying to get you to do? He's always trying to get you to sign a contract, right? Every story you ever hear, the devil can influence, the devil can do all kinds of things, but he can't interfere until he gets you to sign that contract. At that point, he'll make you a rock star, he'll do all these things, but in the end, right, you've signed your soul away, you've signed your life away in exchange for an artificial contractual situation, life.
I thought you were going to say, pardon me for interrupting you, but I thought you were going to say that the devil's tool was the fiddle.
Well, that was an inducement to contract.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Funny story, because as I was looking at the legal terms, I said, well, the highest law is love, right? I mean, love thy neighbor, etc., forgiveness and charity. Those are the highest of the laws. And so I'm looking at these things. They don't exist. There's no forgiveness. That's why we have judges and courts. Mm-hmm. If we had forgiveness, we wouldn't need a legal system.
Exactly.
If we had charity, we wouldn't need money. And if we had love, which we don't, unfortunately, we would not be induced into certain contexts. The word love is not defined in the legal system because it's real. It's not something artificial.
Yeah.
The only thing that I ever found in all the dictionaries I looked at for love was inducement to contract.
Interesting. And you can't patent love either.
No, but you can trick people into getting married, right? In other words, getting them into a contractual obligation by conjoining two statuses that belong to the government and put them into one, what they call corporation or family, right? You can induce people to do that because you, of course, trick them into thinking they're really getting married, but in fact, it's two persons that are conjoining and becoming one. You see, this is the problem. Everything in legal is opposed to everything in nature. And if you were to really get married, it would be spiritual. There'd be no contract. There'd be no license. There'd be no, you don't need permission. You gotta ask yourself, why are you asking permission to get married? Why are you getting a license to get married? Why, what, who, especially when that's one of the things that, I believe is the Constitution or the Declaration says is a right that can't be taken away. Why are you getting permission to get married? Well, because you're not getting married. Your person is joining as a corporation into another one. When two persons become one, it's a corporation. And this is why the Bible says, do not respect persons. What's a person? A corporation, an association, anything that is a body of men who have combined that give themselves a flattering title, go by that title instead of being self-responsible, give themselves limited liability, etc., etc., etc. So what you find is that everything that the Bible says do not do, the legal law says do. And so, because we're citizens, we're subjects, we're required to follow this law, we do. We have no spiritual choice. We have no right to say no, or we just do without whatever it is we want. We don't get married, right? And so that is what I discovered and came to understand, that there's this whole program, this whole foundational thing, time being the main construct, that holds it all together. And if you can, therefore, put yourself, if you will, in the eyes of God and the eyes of the universe, is there time? Well, no, there is existence, and existence is never changing, never ending. There's creation. Creation is never ending. It wasn't a historical event, right? So you have a problem here where you believe in something so sincerely and so it's so ingrained into our DNA. It's so ingrained into our everyday processes that we believe something that is not true is a truth. And when you start examining everything in that way, take the things that you would never even consider to be false and really think about them. This is how you start waking up to the truth, not the patriot movement, not the truth movement, right, not the Constitution and all this, all the histories and all the founding gods and all the... No, No, no. This is how you wake up back. This is how you're reborn, as the Bible puts it, back into nature and its law. You don't do things against its law. You don't recognize or respect these things. Doesn't mean, like I said, you can't utilize this concept, this tool, to plant your garden. What it does mean is that you must understand that the artificial construct, the existence of anti-life, anti-existence, which is the legal fiction, everything that we do and believe in is based on time. That's one pillar. There's several other pillars that keep it all together. One of those is personhood, or what we call the citizenship, membership, whatever. Another one is simulation, hypocrisy. It is absolutely necessary to get us to disobey the very law of our source, that which is in our best interest, that which keeps us, that sustains our very lives, that which would protect us from against all evil. We must be pitted against that. To do that, there are two things to do that with. One is simulation, which again is just hypocrisy. The other, though, is a concept called dissimulation. When you add those two together, simulation plus dissimulation is to pretend to be something you're not. Whereas simulation is to pretend to be something. This is to pretend to be something you're not. And when you consider the entire system, well, I'm a banker, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, I'm a this. These are all flattering titles, not supposed to respect. If you're a doctor, then heal, right? Don't
Exactly.
bankrupt me and kill me,
right?
With your iatrogenic, bad record. Heal.
Exactly.
Why? You don't. Your healing is self-evident. Your title is not.
Right.
I'm supposed to trust you because you say you're a doctor. Well, show me, heal me.
Right. I have one quick question. Let's go back to the beginning. So, for the sake of the discussion, what does someone do that has just had a child? Because I think we're talking about something that goes back to the base level of a human coming into this world. Now, the contract that you're saying is signed with a birth certificate is signing the child over to the state, making the child a ward of the state. What do you do right now in 2022 when you want to have a kid or you've had a kid? How do you move forward in that?
Well, first, you forgive yourself because of your ignorance. You forgive your own parents because of their ignorance. Okay, you realize that this is a system that has been set up to literally enslave the entire world. Okay, we do it rotely. We don't think about what we're doing. And yet, if you go to the, for instance, I have the Texas birth records office, which is of all things, it's the record of deeds. Okay, it's a deed. You can imagine,
it's the result of a
title,
deed.
right? Yeah. So, what it says is the purpose of the birth certificate. And the purpose of the birth certificate is to take you, and this pretty much applies to the entire world, but it especially makes sense in the United States. The world has been taken over by nation states. Most people don't even know what a nation state is because we're told that we shouldn't study political science. Political science, in any movie you watch, oh, you're gonna do a career in political science. Oh, you're gonna be unemployed. Oh, political science, horrible, horrible. But in fact, the very foundation of political science is the way the world works, right? The United Nations only recognizes nation states as states. Okay. It does not recognize California. It does not recognize Utah or New York or any other quote-unquote state because the United States is the only thing it recognizes as international law. Remember, the Constitution is international law. So the Constitution created this thing that morphed into the nation state, as did every other country. So our history, again, big fat lie. Okay, every country in the world was tricked into becoming what they call a republic.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We all are, we're a republic. I have no idea what we're talking about. It just means commonwealth. It doesn't really mean anything. And just to give you an example of other republics in the world, how about China?
Exactly.
Yeah.
How about Russia?
Yes.
How about every other country in the world that's not a monarchy is basically either a dictatorship or a republic? Wait a minute. The problem is also, on top of that supposedly self-governing thing, a nation state was created, something that's recognized in international law, and that's where your government powers lie. The concept of freedom doesn't exist. Okay, the states are created by the United States, which is in Washington, D.C. It's not part of the 50 states. So what the birth certificate does is it establishes a person, a status within the United States, a corporation in Washington, D.C., or a corporation wherever. Now, in the England, Scotland, and Northern Ireland are not recognized internationally. Only the United Kingdom. That should piss people off to no end, but nobody knows it. Nobody knows that what we consider as states or countries are not recognized internationally because they're part of a nation state, a corporate structure that was built to conquer all these places. The United States conquered all the states in the Civil War. And when you go back and you read what that means, conquer and purchase mean the same thing. So you have your Louisiana Purchase. Well, what did the Louisiana Purchase? Who purchased it? Well, United States. What happened to it? It then became states, but it was already a conquered or purchased territory of the United States. There's no freedom here. This is a big, everything I said in the beginning, everything you've been taught is a lie. And I've been going over this now in triplicate, making my sort of final little radio show documentary about it. I'm shocked that I'm kind of mad at myself that I didn't really understand this earlier, because I had always been saying it. I just didn't understand what I was saying, that when you conquer something, it ends. The United States ended in the Civil War, right? You had 10 countries or 10 states completely raped, completely pillaged, new governments put in, and I've got congressional quotes. I've found other people that have quit this movement long before I even got into it, because they found out, they said, okay, I've been studying the national law, right? I know all this stuff about the United States, but I've never considered the law of nations. I've never considered all that. So what's happening with these birth certificates? The birth certificate says, or what it does, what the website for Texas says, is it takes and it creates a status, a person of the United States. It assigns that person to the United States. It puts it in domicile to the United States. When we talk about domicile, we mean where your law comes from. And it puts you in residence, mere residence. Residence and domicile, two different things, even though they can be used interchangeably. To compare the two would be like feminine and masculine, or employee and employer, principal and agent, right? They're two completely subservient to the other, right? And when I say feminine and masculine, I'm referring to the Latin languages where you have masculine words and feminine words. The reason they're pushing all this stuff with feminine and masculinity is because they don't want you to use masculine words. They don't want you to use words with authority.
Exactly.
If you can feminize everything in the ancient meaning of the term, not sexually, then you can destroy an entire people, because they no longer have powerful words, words that they can use. They no longer have words that mean anything or have dominance. They only have subservient words to which the dominator uses to control them, and that's where we are. That's why they've dumbed down the language. That's why they've made these memes of, hypermasculinity and all that. Right. So when I say those terms, I'm referring specifically to language, arts, and the most ancient system of language. In German, it's die, das, and der, right? In Spanish, I can't remember what it is.
L-A-N-A-S.
Yeah, there you go. So that's older than this country. That's older than, dirt. It's that's the way language is supposed to be. It's supposed to have things that are so. To destroy a people, you destroy their language. You dumb it down. You make a mongrel language like English, and you speak in the courts and in the higher places. You speak the law Latin or the highest form, and that's even how they define it. It's not even me saying that, right? So they call it dog Latin, what we speak, because dog is a 4-footed beast of burden. And it is a subservient beast, right? It's there's so much to this. So when I'm put into when a person is created, that person has nothing to do with your child. It has nothing to do with you.
Mm-hmm.
The only way the person can be attached to you is if you act in it. And this is why the Bible says, do not respect or use, or there's like 50 verses in the Bible. It says this about persons. Do not respect, do not use, do not judge while in person. In other words, do not judge while pretending to be a judge, right? A person that is not something that you are not. Some artificial title, right? So a status is created. Status and person mean the same thing. That person only exists in the United States. And internationally, therefore. So it's a commercial vessel that you use to operate. The best comparison I can make to it is when you go and you play a board game. When you open up that Monopoly game, what you've done is you've opened up a jurisdiction, a nation-state jurisdiction. You've opened up a legal territory, if you will. In order to play that game, what do you have to do? What do you have to assume to play the game of Monopoly, or for that matter, chess or any other game?
An identity.
Right. Can you walk on the board, or would that disrupt the game?
Right.
Right. So you have to become, or at least believe that you become, a person, a status, a character, an avatar in that game. I'm going to be the shoe. I'm going to be the thimble. Right. Well, I mean, there's no difference between that and being a person in the United States. It sounds funny, but it's true.
Yeah.
There is no difference between that little piece on that little board or some video game or whatever and what we do in commerce in the United States and everywhere in the world. We assume a character that we are not in order to get benefits and rights and all these different things.
Right.
Just like we do in the Monopoly game. And guess what? The Monopoly game tells us what we can and can't do because we've entered into that artificial realm. And at the end of the day, what happens? Oh, well, in the legal system, it's do or die, right? Eat or be eaten. That's not how it is if you love your neighbor and you're charitable and you're forgiving and we actually live the fulfilling spiritual life, that's not how it would be. But in the legal realm, what's the goal of Monopoly?
To win.
Acquire.
Capitalism, baby.
The most money.
I'm gonna buy everything up, and every time you come on my land, I'm gonna
charge you.
And in the end, you're gonna be broke. And then what happens? Well, game's over because you've screwed everybody, but in the end, you get screwed because the game wasn't real in the first place. The board closes up, and the bank owns everything.
Right. The reason I ask you that question is because I think that there are people right now who are in this situation where they have signed this contract in their lives and they're waking up to this reality and saying, okay, how do I take my left foot and step all the way over to the right and get out of this. So I don't get my kid a birth certificate. I don't put them in school. They don't get a driver's license. Like, how are we living if we don't comply?
Well, and that's just it. We're at the point now where the system is sort of being revealed to us, right? It can't help it, because at the same time, it's creating an artificial construct, a matrix, a virtual reality, a whole computer world, right, where people are buying land that doesn't exist. They've got judges, they've got wills where they can leave stuff digitally, right? None of it's real. We know that in the digital realm, nothing, if I buy a plot of land in Snoop Doggville or whatever it is, right, or in Metaverse or whatever,
yeah,
we know that land doesn't actually exist except in a hypocrisy, a simulation.
yes.
Right? We have to believe it exists. We have to actually put our faith in it and abandon the truth, God, right? There is no difference. I tell you this, there is no difference between that and the legal system. You have a title that says you own a house, but you don't own the house, you own the title. But the title belongs to the state who gave it to the person that you are pretending to be. You don't own anything because you're acting in that person. Your child will own nothing because everything you've taught your child, you've taught it to do in person, which is a property of government, a status of government. Therefore, anything that child accumulates will belong to government. It does. That is how everything was stolen from us. The very product of our labor. And I won't say ours because you are fully responsible for labor, the labor of a child. I will grant you that. The product of our labor, whether it's childbearing or whether it's something that we do, we are employed, which means used, by a corporation. All of our ideas, all of our everything we've ever done has been taken from us in the name of a corporation, which we're not supposed to respect because it's a person. We have given up everything to this structure of artificial persons. They rule us. When you have a congressman, they're corporation souls. The Queen of England is a corporation soul. They go around as different corporations wherever they go. It's amazing that we have fallen so deep that we actually think the Queen is a woman. The Queen is a status that belongs to the Crown Corporation, as does all the wealth that we think belongs to the Queen. None of it belongs to the Queen. None of it belongs to anybody. Whatever you think you own, you do not, because you've acquired it just like you acquired the birth certificate. You applied for it and got a receipt for your child. You have been put in receivership of this quote-unquote child, which is, again, a legal term. And you are expected to raise that child. If I read you the court's opinion on what it says a child is, you would, again, crap your pants, because it says the product of a marriage between two persons belongs to the state. The marriage is a contract between two persons and the state. Therefore, the state is the parental, the head parent. They call it parentis. It's a Latin term. I can't think of it right now. I could send you the research I did on it, but I was shocked to read when the court examines a marriage where the child is in question, the custody of the child is in question, it quotes the parent potestas. Sorry, I'm really bad with Latin, but it quotes all of these doctrines, and it specifically says that it owns the child. You only have it because of the benefice of the court or the state, basically.
Right. So you're the guardian.
The state owns the child, right? Yeah. Because we're talking about a person. The state doesn't actually own the child. What you've done is you've you've collateralized yourself, your child, into this persona, which in Latin means mask, and you have thrown it into this system. You do everything. It goes to public school in a public name, in a public vessel. It does it gets a bank account. It gets a social security number. It gets all these different things, none of which belong to the child, but to the person the child is acting through. And you teach it to do exactly that, just as your parents taught you. Again, first thing, forgive yourself. You didn't know. Second thing, and this is a little more difficult, because if you look around, you don't find much hope out there. You don't find much to be hopeful about, right? People are, and let's just face it, people are pretty screwed up because of all this all the lies and everything we live by, because we're so far from the truth, so far removed from God that we don't even recognize. We spray nature with insecticide because, oh
exactly.
my God, nature's encroaching on our artificial space.
Yes.
Right? We're so out of touch with everything. What does the Bible say? Again, follow the example. What does it say to do? It says to sell all your possessions and to, quote unquote, circumcise yourself from those who are not like-minded, those who do not follow the law of God. What does circumcise mean? Most people don't know. They instantly think of a penis. Circumcise means to separate. Right? Now, the Jews came up with a custom, and that has nothing to do with when the Bible says circumcise yourself from the society that is following the law of man above the law of God. No, you separate yourself. You take yourself, you put yourself in a position where you can practice that. Now, can you do that and also have a job in the legal system? We talked about marriage. Marriage comes from a concept called husbandry. Husbandry, traditionally, is being married to the land, right? That's so foreign to us, again, that we can't even imagine not wanting to take a vacation or not wanting to travel or not wanting to do all these things that we consider our rights. Well, if you're married to the land, if you are living from and getting your sustenance and your livelihood from the land, you have no other place to be. You have everything you could possibly want or need right there. It is, as long, again, if you're following the law of nature, then you're doing as nature does. We talked about this on another show. There's a guy, Back to Eden. He made a documentary. I don't know if you saw that. Where he talks about, he's reading the Bible and he's digging and he's trying to plant all these crops, right? And he's digging in the dirt and breaking his back. And the Bible says men will be cursed to back-breaking work because they don't follow the law of God. Well, he looked around and he said, why are my crops dying when I'm taking such care and I'm digging and I'm planting and I'm covering the seed? But over here, nature, no one's taking care of it and it's doing wonderfully, right? There's all this overgrowth and this, ferns and all this. You don't see a bare patch of land. And yet over here in my garden, I've left entire swatches of dirt open to the sun so that any water I put on it evaporates to the sun. What's happening over here? Trees. Trees are shading, and the undergrowth is guarding and preventing that moisture from leaving. It never has to be watered. What does he do? He brings in a bunch of mulch so that the soil is covered, drops some seeds in the mulch, rakes the mulch, doesn't dig. Beautiful garden. Why? Because he emulated nature. He didn't try to go against nature. He didn't dig and leave the earth exposed and put all kinds of chemicals and do everything you can to prevent nature from happening. He went with nature, and now he doesn't do any work. Okay, bring in the mulch, dump it, spread it, sprinkle some seeds. Golden. Add some water. The water stays underneath. You don't have to water all the time. Beautiful, beautiful story, right? I highly recommend it. It's called Back to Eden. There's another movie I highly recommend. It'll give you some hope, which is called The Biggest Little Farm movie.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
That is, wonderful. Yeah, just trust me when I say that should be at the top of everybody's list, Very inspirational. But, the point I'm trying to make is, again, right in the Bible, it describes this guy as he's laboring in doing everything against what nature is doing right next to him to grow his own food. And it's, he gets a little result and he has to bring in all this water. If he would have if we would just do what nature does, if we would follow our source, follow our own, follow the example of the law of God, that is Christ, is that concept of logos, which is Christ, the law of the universe, is right there for us to follow. It's not some man, it's not some history, it's the law of nature that we're supposed to be following and emulating, and therefore not acting against nature and its law. It's so simple and beautiful when you understand it. But again, to control people, you have to take them out of their nature.
And that seems as good a place as any to, in the first free hour, to gain access to the almost 2 additional hours of this mind-blowing conversation. Just go to patreon.com/themeltpodcast, where for as little as $3 measly per month, you can get access to full episodes, exclusive episodes, and early episodes, and also the monthly Melt meetups, the next one, which is this coming Sunday at 5 p.m. In the second hours, we talk about the legal system as the antithesis of the Bible, getting rid of one's status, returning to nature, the foundation of common law, royal bloodlines, Clint's idea to start a monastery, and Hunter and I's commentary, and much, much more. So much more. My God. Thank you all so very much for listening. It's greatly appreciated. Hopefully you gleaned something positive from this conversation, and hopefully you've also received some inspiration to, at the very least, explore the topics discussed more. Please go to the link in the episode notes where you can download Clint's book about the straw man for free, because it is mind-blowing and cram-packed full of very pertinent information. If you were to get a hard copy of the book, it would be over 1,100 pages long. But man, really astounding stuff. I have to commend Clint for his very rigorous research, and not only that, but his ability to be able to draw it all together in something that is comprehensive, especially when trying to tackle such a huge, vast concept, or concepts, as he does in his work. All right. Thank you very, very much. I compel you to go to our YouTube page and subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, and visit all the other links that will lead you to Clint's different things. His YouTube channel, Red Pill Sunday School, is highly worth checking out too. And there is an audio version of one of his books there, and tons of documentaries, tons of great stuff. Clint's the man. All right. Wonderful stuff coming your way. Just stay tuned. Thank you so much for listening. You're greatly appreciated. And until next time, take care, people. If you've liked what you've heard and would like to contribute to the Melt, there are a few ways that you can do that. The most tangible would be financially. Just click the Patreon link in the episode notes, and there you will find ways that you can contribute for as little as $3 a month. This will give you access to bonus episodes, early access to regular episodes, and you can also participate in monthly Zoom meetups. Contributing financially will also help make the Melt better, pay the bills, and help to make this podcast a full-time endeavor that I can fully devote my time to and provide you with more content. Another way of contributing would be to go to wherever it is that you subscribe to The Melt and give it a favorable review or rating, and this will help it to reach more people. You can also spread the word to friends and family via social media, email, or word of mouth. And lastly, if none of those options are readily available or appealing to you, simply send your positive thoughts and intentions. In an interconnected and quantumly entangled multiverse, these also go a long way. Thank you.